So in this day of electrification of cars and Internet of Things, IoT, which I've frequently said, is IoT is basically putting electronics in things that don't need them, and just because we can, not because we necessarily need to. We're taking IoT stuff, we're taking electronics, putting them in arguably a lot of class 1 devices, right? That toothbrushes, for example, that are now connected devices, doorbells that are now connected devices, smart meters that read the water flow for your house or electrical consumption. None of those could be arguably class 3. If they fail, no one dies. They go on people, wearables, for example, they go on people go into harsh environments. All of a sudden, they almost have to be built to class 3 standards to work, right? And even if it's an $8 part, it kind of still needs to work, even if its cost of failure is nothing. I'm seeing, at least from reliability, contamination removal, reliability standpoint, a lot of class 1 stuff now going through hoops that were generally reserved for 3, maybe 2, but certainly 3. Class 3. Are you seeing that in other forms of electronic assembly? Are you seeing this proliferation of electronics into areas that had been void of electronics in the past, creating any challenges? Are you seeing this kind of new emergence of standard technology into a new field where there's a lot of missing information?
Light bulbs.
Light bulbs,
we spent,
that's right.
5 or 6 years ago, we spent most of our consulting times in light bulb factories, teaching them how to build the little circuit boards that are necessary to fire LEDs.
Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, I'm glad you brought up LEDs, because there was a learning curve with LEDs, with the backing material, silver backing material, and then they found out that there's sulfur in the air, which occurs in certain industrialized nations. The LEDs were failing. You're aware of what I'm talking about there?
You talk about the classic class 1 consumer product.
Exactly.
A light bulb.
Throwaway, right.
But yet it does go in, as you said, Mike, goes into some really harsh environments, and you still want it to work. So
kind of the definition of the classes, class 3, class 2, class 1, I think there's going to be a little bit of recalculation of those, because a $4 LED light bulb that's supposed to work for 10 years would put a company out of business if it only worked for 1 year. Yet nobody dies, it's just inconvenient. They still have to build in a manner that will allow the part to last for its intended life in the intended climactic operating environment, which may very well be a class 3 requirement for solderability, for placement, for contamination, whatever all the class 3 differences are.
Yes, we've actually run into this kind of question. Phil has coined the phrase IPC class 2.5, or now I think we're talking 1.5, where people have always had special requirements where you got a class 2 product, but you have some requirements that need higher reliability, so you need to adapt some of the rules of class 3. We've seen that for many years with class 2 products. And now I think what you're talking about is it's just filtering down class 1.5 or something like that, where you as a developer, in concert with your customer, what do you really require? What's required, cost-benefit ratio, years of service, and all those good parameters, and then working with us to translate it into some combination of the traditional rigid IPC class 1, 2, 3 things to give your product the service life that it needs at the price it has to be.
Some other interesting things that challenge how things are being judged. We typically think of class 3, either harsh environment, things along those lines. And of course, then we have class 3 mission critical, where if it fails, somebody or somebody's are going to die. But to give you an interesting example, with one customer we were dealing with a number of years ago, and they were building windshield wiper controls, particularly for SUVs. And the windshield wiper control product circuit, if you will, for the front windshield wipers was considered class 3, whereas the one for the rear window on the SUV was class 2. Why? Because if that first one fails, you're going down the Mass Turnpike in middle of God knows what kind of wintry mix, I believe is what it was called. In the winter, that fails, you can't see where you're going. But on the other hand, the rear windshield wiper, not as essential, right, especially these days with the cameras. So it's just interesting the divisions we see that where, and what is actually defined. And yeah, sometimes it is blurry, or you want certain aspects of class 3, but you don't want to build the entire thing class 3, and that's kind of where class 2.5 kind of evolved. God, we've confused a lot of people with that over the years.
Join us on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month for new episodes of Reliability Matters.